So I was at the Agile Alliance conference in Salt Lake City. This would have been 2011 or so. And the AV guy was in and he was checking out the sound systems and whatnot. He was going, test 1, test 1, 2, 1, 2. I go, why do you always stop at 2? And he looked at me and says, because after 3 comes lift. Normally I have someone come in and warm up the crowd for me. This is, kind of came in late, so I have to do my own jokes today. Wow, everybody got silent. Way over there in that corner. Hi, can you hear me? So the other stupid jokes I know, let's see, I taught swiftwater rescue for a few years, about 10, 12 years. And so you're standing by the edge of the river and you're on a rapid and the water is crashing around you as it bounces off the rocks and heads downstreams. And so the standard joke is, if you cannot hear me in the back, please lift your hand. So if you cannot hear me in the back, please lift your hand. How many came to my session last year on developing software development? Those lights are still blinding me, which is one of the reasons I walk around and try not to look at the camera. All right, so this will be new information for some of you. We're going to talk today about future-proofing your career. We're going to start with a review of my career, very brief, very short. When I started, Fortran 4 was still in use. Now, Fortran 4 was not the language mostly used, it was Fortran 77. That was the popular new boy on the block. I think Fortran 4 was actually from the 1960s. But they were still using it, and the important part, let's see, does this thing have a little button? Nope. Boy, that didn't work like I wanted it to. There it is. We'll avoid the buttons. I got paid for it. Learning old languages might be fun from an archaeological standpoint, but if you're not getting paid for it, then do you really want to go there? Let's see. Yeah, 300 baud modem. It was not acoustically coupled, but it was a 300 baud modem. I was on the 7th floor of the building. The VAX cluster was on the 3rd floor, I think, of the building. And so I dialed into the VAX. And you had to get in early because if you didn't get one of the dial-in lines, you had to wait for somebody's line to go bad or them to take a break or something. 100 acres of manufacturing. This at the time was the world's largest computer automated cigarette manufacturing plant. From the time the tobacco leaf hit the door to the time it left as a cigarette, it was controlled, tracked, everything by computer. So it was a lot of computers. I mean, we had 640K on the PdP 1144s. We had no idea what we were going to do with all that storage. The internet didn't exist yet. Has anybody gotten an idea about how long ago this was? Anybody got a guess? Yes, ma'am. 30-ish years ago? Very close, very close. Does anybody recognize that? That was my CompuServe ID. Yeah. So you were around then too. Some things never leave you. They're with you forever. So the answer is yes. 35 years ago, I started my illustrious career. Most of this is not going to be about me. Most of this is going to be about things I've learned and things that might help you if you decide to stay in this discipline, in this career path. So, real quick, we're going to talk about what is software development very briefly. Then we'll talk about learning, a little bit about skill, and then we'll wrap up and call it a day, or at least the morning. So, this is actually a slide. I'd use the little pointer thing up here, but the last time I did it, I reset the presentation. Bottom left-hand corner, you'll see I wrote this slide in 2011. I was doing a presentation on the system behind the software, how we go about building software. And so the question becomes, what is so hard about writing software, writing a program, or as we call them now, apps? You figure out what the user wants. The user says, this is what I want. The developer says, okay. After a while, they send it back to the user. How hard can that be? Really? I mean, at the meta level, this is all we're really doing. So I've been thinking about it a little more in depth lately. This is what I have now as of 2019, and I was talking with Paul Booth, who is another speaker. He's speaking right now. And I said, Paul, what am I missing? So if you come off of organization, you'll see I don't have middle managers there. So I'm doing little tweaks here and there, but this is really what's involved in software development. These are all the things. The actual development part, top left corner off of coding, you'll see essential difficulties, accidental difficulties, and technical practices. The essential difficulties and accidental difficulties come from a great paper, No Silver Bullet, Frederick Brooks, 85 or 86 time frame. You can Google No Silver Bullets on the internet, download the paper. Very recommended. The man was a great thinker, really understood the field. Let's see, what else about that corner? The technical practices are always changing. When I started, they didn't even know there was no test runners. There were no test runners. No, we just didn't have things like that. Debugging in Fortran was print. You know, you run it and you just keep printing out numbers and values until you go, oh wait, that's not what it's supposed to be. Debuggers and IDEs started coming into play somewhere late 80s, early 90s time frame. So technical practices and the environments that we can work in today are much more comprehensive, much better than we had back then. Learning, and this was just purely coincidental, learning is in the middle of this thing. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is learning. As our tools change, as our environments change, as our organizations change, teams change, we need to be in a state of continuous learning, or we will become dinosaurs and stay where we are at best. And when I say stay where we are at best, there is still a demand for COBOL programmers. So if you started out in COBOL programming and you love COBOL programming, you can still find work as a COBOL programmer. That was not necessarily the path I took. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So each one of these nodes in and of itself looks really cool. But you see the one that says Team Facets? This is my mind map for teams. The Hackman, this is the Hackman node, which is one of those nodes up to the top right. There's a tremendous amount of material, a tremendous amount of content that's available to us that impacts us when we try to develop software. You don't have to get them all right, but it's really cool if you can. And being aware of all these different knowledge areas and having some familiarity will help you as you move through your career. I didn't bother to blow that one out. That's change. There was a change node. That's what change looks like for a mind map. The slide deck will be available. You will not be able to read it in the slide deck. If you're curious, send me an email. The emails are across the bottom of the screen, and I will be happy to send you the mind maps. All right, let's talk about learning a little bit. As we work in a very progressive world and discipline, we need to keep learning. Otherwise, we will find ourselves prepared for a world which no longer exists. And so we want to keep learning. I just went to Wikipedia, and I just tracked the number of new languages in those decades. We're losing ground, and we're losing ground fast. So, I don't know, what is that? 275 language approximately since the 1970s, and that doesn't include the 50s and the 60s before that. So, are you getting an idea that, and this is just programming languages, this doesn't consider environments, it doesn't consider build systems, it doesn't consider things like the cloud, containers. What are some of the other things that are changing rapidly that I haven't mentioned? Anybody? Anyone? I certainly didn't name everything that's changing. I'm sorry. Services. Yeah, we went from monolithic applications that took us 18 months to build so we could get feedback and find out that it wasn't what the user really wanted. We're now dealing with microservices that are designed to be instantiated, tested, and we can drop a service without dropping the app and replace it in a heartbeat if we need to. So that's something else. Thank you very much. Is there one other thought about stuff that's been changing a lot lately? I mentioned the cloud. Did I mention the cloud? Good. And I've learned that the cloud is not where you keep your data on the internet. You know, that was my first impression of the cloud is, oh, I use Dropbox. I'm in the cloud. No, cloud is a fascinating place where you can instantiate applications as you need more, and as the demand goes, you can reduce it, you can instrument them, you can automate them. It's a fascinating world, that world of the cloud. So we're dealing with a lot of change. We're losing ground. And yet we're working with neurology and biological wiring that hasn't shifted substantially in probably 5,000 to 10,000 years. So, this drawing is from a book called Science and Sanity, an Introduction to Non-Aristotelian Logic and General Semantics by Alfred Korzybski. I was going to bring the book with me. It weighs about 4 pounds and has 800 pages in it. That's the introduction. I haven't even had the courage to look and see if there's a follow-on edition that describes the rest of the product. But what we're looking at here is the top kind of bucket has a bunch of little holes in it, so things filter out. So that's the world at large. Our sensory systems take in information at a much larger, greater rate than we can actually absorb and make sense of them. We develop heuristics to deal with this. So as you come down, you'll see that it says object, and off to the left is Fido. It's one of the shortcuts. Oh, look, this is Fido. And then we generalize that to, oh, it's a dog, it's a canine, and on we can go. Some of the stuff gets through the object and gets down into the descriptions, and so we start to abstract information from the real world. And we don't really work on the real world. We work in our heads on what we think is the real world. So here's another little picture that hopefully explains it better. So we have the abstracting model. We cannot take in everything that comes at us, so we filter some out. Then we start to, what we sense is not what happened. So we're starting to add layers of meaning. That's nonverbal. Once you start to use words, you are now taking a symbol and ascribing that symbol to whatever it was you experienced. From there, we go to meaning. And meaning is, well, is it important to me? Should I do something about it? The neocortex is a wonderful piece of machinery, 6 layers in it, if I remember correctly. And a lot of this stuff happens in like layers 1 through 4. The stuff that actually makes it to our consciousness is the stuff that doesn't fit in any of the other buckets. And then we have to actually do something with what we have been presented. So we take meaning and we create mental models. Mental models, how can I say this? Mental models form our view of the world as we think it should be. Not necessarily the world as everyone else thinks it should be, but the world which we think should be. Now, back to that little diagram. Once we get this new information, we can do one of two things. This is the work of Piaget, a Swiss psychologist back in the 30s, I believe. We can take this new information and assimilate it, which means pull it into our existing mental models. Metaphor is an example of assimilation. We go, oh, well, here's an example. A word processor is kind of like a typewriter because, you know, you type on keys and then you get a document out. Well, it's similar enough that we can assimilate that into our mental models. The other choice we have is accommodating. Accommodating means we rethink and reevaluate and restructure our mental models based on the new information that has the new meaning that we've just received from our sensory organs. If we hang on, if we assimilate everything, we learn nothing. If we throw out all of our models all of the time and rebuild from scratch, we're reinventing wheels. So there's a balance that we want to find here between, yes, this is close enough to what I currently believe, and I have to rebuild everything based on what I've just learned. Sometimes you need to. So an example of assimilation was back to Fortran. I was fairly good at Fortran 77. And then this other language came along called C. The C programming language, I still remember my first C programming language. It looked like Fortran because I had no skill and understanding of how to write a C program. Over the course of the next 3 to 5 years or so, I got really good at writing C, but that was a form of assimilation. I'm trying to think of a accommodation. Complexity. I used to have a very linear view of the world, but now that I understand complexity better, I had to do away with some of my mental models and realize that what I was assuming was causal relationships could be at best correlated and may not even exist at all. So you need to balance these two processes, assimilation and accommodation. The way the mind works, it uses shortcuts, heuristics. You can't really read that. You can download this off of Wikipedia. This is the Cognitive Bias Codex. There's 100-some-odd biases up there, shortcuts that your mind takes that sometimes work well, sometimes don't work well. And so you want to be aware that the mind is doing this. To my knowledge, awareness is the best and questioning. So you want to be aware and you want to question occasionally. Like I said, you cannot question everything in your life. Otherwise, good morning, how are you, would stop you in your tracks and you wouldn't be able to have another conversation for the rest of the day because you're trying to figure out all of the different things involved in, hi, how are you? But be aware of them. There's a handful of them that are common, the observer bias. So for those of you who, like me at one time, worked with teams, when I show up with the team, the first question is, why is Don here? How should I behave? He's a newcomer. So when I show up, things change. And if I'm trying to observe the team in their natural state, that doesn't do me any good, doesn't do them any good, and certainly not the sponsor who's paying me to help the team improve their ability to deliver user value. What's another one? Cognitive biases. The fundamental attribution error. It is so basic that they call it the fundamental. The fundamental attribution error says that when you don't do something you said you were going to do, you are a bad person. You have character flaws. You are just mean or forgetful or something. There's something wrong with you. When I fail to do something that I said I was going to do, it's because the server crashed, and you get this whole list of reasons. It's not my characteristics that are at fault. It's all these circumstances in my world. So that's another cognitive bias, fundamental attribution error. You can read about it on the internet. If you want to read about them a little differently, I'm trying to include links in the handout or in the slide deck. The visual study guide, there's 128, I think, different cognitive biases that you can read about if you care to. Moving on from how the brain works a little bit, and that was a very brief, short conversation about how the brain works. I talked about how we assign labels. We call them words, and we say, oh, this is what it means. So the three words I wanted to focus on here are teach, educate, and learn. I'm assuming most of us have been in school and we've had teachers who stand up at the front and tell us, share information so that we can perhaps learn and do better. Certainly pass the test, pass the grade, pass college, get into the workforce and continue on with our careers if we choose to. Educate, similar. The cool thing is learn is different for me. For me, learn is something I do to myself. A teacher can teach me. Well, a teacher can share information and teach. I know people who never learned while that was going on. So learning is something that you do to yourself. And as you look at future-proofing your career, you become learners. That's how we are going to be able to be relevant 35 years after we start. Individual learning. This once again, there'll be a URL at the bottom of this. Individual learning, I lifted this off of the Grows Method website. They have assessments. They have practices, one of which is individual learning, and they have a little assessment section that says, hey, how are you doing on this? Do you have a regular time set aside for you to work on learning, where you can learn things and practice skills? Do you have time and place that is, and you do it consistently? Do you only invest when something important comes up and you don't ever bother? Earlier on in my career I heard there's a difference between 1 year of experience 10 times and 10 years of experience. So it's one of those things, do you ever learn anything new, or are you still doing what you've been doing all along? You've just been doing it longer. And then there's the continuing assessment. What have you done over the past week? Oddly, I spend a fair amount of time in airplanes, and I do a lot of reading in airplanes. So I would do relatively well here because I did learn some new things. I'm currently interested in psychological safety, Amy Edmondson's work, and she's got a new book out called The Fearless Organization. That's what I'm currently working through. Make it more interesting, I'm trying to get an online book club going. So I've contacted some friends to see if they would be interesting, because it's always more fun and more educational. I learn more when I talk about the stuff I'm reading and hear what other people are learning. So, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're good. Deliberate learning. Once again, from the Grows website, set up a regular investment. And we'll go through each of these in a little more detail. Use SMART goals, diversify topics, and create a plan. So, set up a regular investment. This is like investing in your retirement, in your 401k. You want to do it every month, at least the 401k. You probably want to set up, you're learning a little bit more frequently, but you want to make that investment. Some employers will help you with this. Some employers do will reimburse tuition costs, will send you to workshops, but you want to set up for yourself a regular investment. You want to have a consistent time. One of the other things that I do is I'm the first one up at the house. And so that's my time before my wife wakes up to sit and read and study and learn. I always do it in the living room. She's asleep, I'm drinking coffee, there's no interruptions. So I will say, the kids are gone, there's no pets, so my context may be slightly different than your context, but find a place where it's quiet, you can do it regularly. If you can't do it every day, can you schedule Monday, Wednesday, Fridays? Try to find a pattern that will work for you. And you want to do it outside normal work time and spaces if possible. If you're in the office, you're always subject to interruptions. Specific goals, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time boxed. This slide has been around probably as long as I have. Rather than saying, I want to learn a new programming language, be specific. I want to learn Python. How are you going to measure how good you are at Python? Can you install it? Is it already installed? Can you fire up an IDE to access it, to write it, to run the interpreter? Is it attainable, relevant, and time-boxed? So a SMART goal might be, I want to be able to print out hello world, which seems to be a very common starting point for languages, by Tuesday next week. And now you have a goal, something you can aim for. Diversify topics. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I'm gonna segue off for just a minute and talk about generalists and specialists. So when I started in '84, by '86, I pretty much had decided that I was going to be a generalist. I think it's the only conscious decision I made in my career. Everything else just seemed to flow from there. Because I was working in a heavily deck environment and large greenfield project, and I knew that if I stayed with that particular paradigm, once this project ended, I would have to go find the next big deck. Anybody here remember DEC besides me? Digital Equipment Corporation? I'm saying there's a few of us here. Yeah, they're gone. Let's see, they were bought by Compaq, who was bought by Hewlett Packard. So, you know, they're just not here anymore. Anyway, I made the decision to be a generalist rather than specializing in that particular portion, that particular set of hardware, because being a generalist gave me more options. It means I had to learn different things, and I had to learn possibly more of them. But the cute little saying is, a generalist is a person who knows more and more about less and less until they know, they know less and less about more and more until they know nothing about everything. The specialist is somebody who knows more and more about less until they know everything about nothing. Yeah, you've heard that one. So anyway, diversify topics. Let's see, that one? Yeah, there we are again. There's a bunch of different topics on here. They all relate to the field of software development in one way or another. So diversify. If you spend all of your time learning just programming languages, and that can work, you're going to miss out on a lot of other things that you could be learning. And this is a decision. It's individual. My path is probably going to be different than everyone else's path. The point is to be learning and to diversify topics. We already did that slide. And then you want to create a plan. Yeah, so at the bottom of this page, or this slide, I'm sorry, I I thought I did this, but I forgot to mention it. The Grows Method website has a learning journal handout that you can download. It's a sample, give you a start, an idea of what you might want to do if you decide to create a learning journal. It's a free download. You do not have to register or anything of that effect. You can just go grab it off the internet. And that brings me back to the plan. What is the next action you can do? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish skimming Fearless Organizations on the flight home today. And then I've already contacted a colleague out in Oregon about, hey, what do you think about doing a book club, book reading around on this? But then start to think out a little longer. Where do you want to be at the end of the year? And then where do you see yourself in 5 years? The key phrase here for me is rebalance. Chris Argyris came up with this concept called double loop learning. The bottom loop, doing things right, that's where you're learning, and then every so often you come up to the mental models in the top, where the context may change. You need to be aware if your context changes, you may have to change things. So if the context changes, that'll affect your mental models, that'll change the goal you're currently working on, and then you come down into the bottom loop where you look at differences, decisions, and actions, and then feedback. So this is the rebalancing loop. This is the part of the 4 steps where you periodically review what you're doing and asking yourself, does this still make sense for who I am, and where I want to be in the future? Sources. I haven't been in a degree offering, not been in a degree offering school since 1984. On the other hand, there's a bunch of workshops available. I've mentioned 3 of them up there. I'm highly partial to those since I facilitate them. But there are other workshops. Agile Coaching Institute has a workshop they do. Many other workshops that are available. I'm sure if you look in your chosen area, you can find workshops. By workshop, I mean you go somewhere for 2 to 5 days and get immersed in the topic. Online workshops, Esther Derby has a retrospectives, powerful retrospectives workshop online. Certified Scrum Practitioner Fast Pass, that's Jason Tanner. I mentioned these 2 in particular because I respect the people who put them together. There are other online learning options, online workshops. Feel free to, once again, check in your domain, see what's available, talk to your friends. Meetups. I don't have meetups on here. Meetups are a great way to talk to other people and find out information about this type of where can I learn more about that topic. Company-sponsored classes, MOOCs, one of my favorite massively open online courses. Coursera and edX are the 2 big names here. The ones I've listed are the ones I have completed. There's a few that I started that didn't quite make it to finish, but these are the ones I actually made it to the end. And you can see it's complexity, Python, semantics, learning, modeling, scaling, social networks, and social psychology. So you can get a wide range. These are free, at least what they were when I took them. So these are low-cost ways of learning new material. Now we have boot camps, code retreats, and coding dojos all around learning new development skills, and then conferences such as Path to Agility. And I forgot to put meetups on here. Other than that, does anybody have any ideas of what do other people do for learning that I haven't included? YouTube. Stack Overflow. I'm sorry? Reading. Oh, boy, how did I miss reading? Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Anything from this side of the auditorium? I guess we'll call it good. Okay, so learning is one thing, skills are something else. Skills for me are applied learning. It's something you can do in real time in the space-time continuum. I have learned that the speed of light is 3.0 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. What good does that do me? Does it make my world better? It may make me a better conversationalist at a cocktail party, although I don't think I've ever used that particular fact. But skills. Skills are a way of taking our learning and instantiating it in the world, using our learning in the world. I just threw up 3 different models here. The one on the left I got from Miriam Willicke. What is it? Rabbit hole learning. And she talks about increasing competencies. She's got familiarity, comprehension, conscious effort, conscious action, proficient, and unconscious competence. So then if you move to the middle model, you start off with unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence. So you don't know what you don't know, you know you don't know, you know and you can do it, and then it's just natural. So that's that model. Dreyfus model, novice, advanced, beginner, competent, proficient. I've recently been reading, and this is one of the places I'm willing to question. This is a model. This is how somebody thinks the world works. That's their mental model. And so when you're working with somebody else's mental model, be aware that there are multiple models out there. If you get a bunch that tend to overlap each other, that's cool. Might be a little more meaningful. But I read things, so every so often I come across an article that says, oh, the Dreyfus model is wrong. Its research failed here, 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 and here. And so I keep turning the page going, and what's next? What model should I replace it with? I am still waiting for that page. So is the Dreyfus model absolutely correct? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But until you can criticize it and then say, and this is what will fit better based on new learnings and research, it works. It kind of overlaps the other models. And then we have the, so there's a little bit of a correlation, so that works for me. The thing about skills is when you try to do something new in the world, your performance goes down. So Andy Hunt, as part of the Groves method, he calls this the suck curve. Because you suck, you rock. And that's over time, because when you start something new, trying to acquire a new skill, you lose performance. My first C program, which looked like Fortran, took a long time to write and get running. As the years went by, I got really good at resetting pointers. You only forget to reset a pointer once in your C programming career because it teaches you a lot. Anyway, I got much better, and I was rocking by the time C++ came along, and then I sort of shifted out of programming primarily for a living. Anything about skills? That was awful short, other than the fact that there's different models. There is the Dunning-Kruger model, which I did not mention. You might want to look that up. Dunning, D-U-N-N-I-N-G, Kruger, K-R-U-G-E-R. And it has to do with the fact that people tend to think they're better than they actually are when they do self-rating. I may include that. I've got a slide for that. I may include that on the next time I give this session. So any questions about skills? Yes, ma'am.
What role do you think assessments play in skill building or opportunity of versus?
So the question is, what role do assessments play when looking at innate versus learning abilities? So in other words, some people are just naturally good at some things, and some people have to work hard at something. Well, remember back to the abstraction, so you've got the world at large, and then you've got significance, then you start assigning words to stuff. Assessments based on what you're doing and what you hope to get from them can be useful. Assessments in terms of personality and job fit, I'm not quite as wild about. And then assessment for stack ranking, I'm violently against. These are personal preferences. We can talk later if you want. So assessments, I think some people have natural abilities in areas that other people do not. I seem to be good with languages. I studied, Spanish, French, German, Russian, smattering of Swedish, and that's simply symbol substitution. So I'm also good with math, which is symbol substitution and manipulation. I'm good with, what else? Programming languages. On the other hand, if you ask me to paint the Mona Lisa, you will be there a long time waiting. But I think people who apply themselves can, I could learn to paint. I just don't have any interest in it. And I would never be a Rembrandt or a Renoir or anybody like that. But I could learn to paint. Who was that guy that had the painting show on TV that? Bob Ross, thank you. Thank you. At least I knew of him. Didn't know his name. Did I even come close to answering your question?
I'm not sure exactly what my question was, but I just was curious your opinion.
Okay, well, so you weren't sure what the question was. I'm not sure what the answer was. Let's move on. All right, so we're sliding in sideways to home plate. So this is sort of what my career has been over the last 35 years. I started out as a developer. I became a systems integrator, and I worked in manufacturing. So that means I bought sensors, I bought I/O subsystems, I bought computers, I wrote programs, I tied it all together and made it work. I used a particular package for the human-machine interface. Got really good at that package, and that led to the techno-hammer phase. This company would have clients who had not managed to use the application the way it should have been, and they needed somebody to go in and rescue the project. And so they would parachute me in. I'd be on site 2-3 weeks, figure out what was wrong, get it fixed or get them on the path to happiness, and leave. So I was rescuing projects. From there I started, so somewhere around the systems integrator phase, I actually took one of the workshops, Problem Solving Leadership with Jerry Weinberg, back in '95, and that sort of caused an inflection in my career, where I started, I still had fairly good technical skills at the time, but I also started working more on the people skills and improving my ability to connect with and share ideas. And so I became an idea sharer. The common phrase for that in this domain is called the Agile Coach. So I did use that for a while, but I couldn't tell people to do anything because I was the coach. Worse than that, I was an external coach, so I had absolutely no positional authority. The best I could do was share ideas and say, hey, well, what about this? Have you ever thought about doing that? What would happen if you chose this option instead? From there, I started doing training. Like I said, I'm part of 3 workshops, a facilitator for 3 workshops, and then I speak at meetups, at conferences, Scrum Gathering, Durban in South Africa last year. I was the closing keynote. So I get to speak, and that goes back to sharing ideas. And what's interesting is finally, as I slide into the sunset of my career, I figure I have another 15 years, so I'm not in a hurry. I'm getting back into programming. They have this thing called a Raspberry Pi. It's a fascinating little device, and I've actually got somebody who has agreed to help me learn TDD. Because I can go, yeah, TDD is great. You should use TDD. I've never done it. So, I ascribe to the value of it, but I have no skill. Zero. So fortunately, I don't know, Amitai Schlier, if you know who he is, also goes by Schmans, has agreed to work with me and help me learn to write TDD, or write applications using TDD. So it's coming around full circle. Wrapping it up, learning is a journey. It's not a destination. You will never get to the end of your learning. There's always something new and different and interesting to learn about. Some people tend to focus and become specialists. My dad said I had the attention span of whatever the length of twice the length of whatever he hit me with. So my attention span, probably not that good. So it seems reasonable that I would become a generalist and keep wandering around. One last final quote. I remember this was on a professor's door at the university where I went to college, and it has stuck with me for my entire career. What you know fills you. What you do not know fills the universe. That's it. Questions, comments, hearsay, innuendo, rumors, anything. Lunch is in a little bit. We can get there early. You could be first in line at lunch today. Thank you. I appreciate you for your time and your willingness to spend that time with me for this last 45 minutes. Have a great conference.